And this is the first one. This is from Northern Tree Care.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Who's this one from? Oh, it's Jason Paxton, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so unusual looking sporocarp in a eucalyptus. And this is a one that I know just from experience, but this is Ladioporus portentosus. It's a brown rot, and it's usually able to be picked up by just sounding, and you can pick it up with a resistograph. So hopefully Jason's there and listening, or grabs it and listens in. How do I feel about it in that situation? It's something I'd monitor. It's an ephemeral fruiting body. And if I look down at this image here, there might even be a little bit of brown rot there, just in that where my mouse is turning down the bottom there. So not something that I'd be concerned about, but something that I'd watch and monitor. It's interesting. We don't often see most species fail just because there's a bit of decay. So I tend to run with it. Now, what is important to know about this is it's highly ephemeral. To get to this size, and I don't think you get it. Oh, yes, you do. To get this size, would have taken a couple of days. It's got lots of little holes in it. If you look carefully, those little holes. Let me zoom in if I can. I think I can. Yeah, I can. Good. Now what I'm going to do is find out how to get that to move across. Hide. Yeah, you can see the small little holes all the way through it. They're done by insects. The fungus, when it comes out, just attracts insects like crazy. And so it tends to be eaten to just a small little patch of what looks like polystyrene that's often sitting at the base of a tree within a matter of a few months. I've had a sample left out for the insects to go through, and I've had it turn just purely to what looked like washing powder in a matter of 3 or 4 months. So they can really hammer it to pieces. So great fungus, a little bit of a concern, but not a lot of a concern. Hopefully that's clear on that. Any questions on that one?
Jason would like to say something.
Yeah, Jason, go ahead. Your mic's off, Jason. You need to turn the mic on. Yep, great. No, you still got your mic off. Down the bottom of your screen, there's a little mic button. Bottom left-hand side, it should be, Jason. A little mic icon. You haven't got everyone turned off, have you, Peter?
Don't think so. I'm just trying to check.
Anyone there able to talk? Kath? Hi, Kath. Can you say something? Can you turn your mic off?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah. So, Jason,
No.
Yeah, I can hear you, Kath.
Volume up.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep. So, Jason, you've got your hand up. Do you want to talk? You can't. Jason can't hear.
Yeah, he needs to turn his microphone on himself. I can't turn it on for him.
Yeah. Jason, your mic is off for some reason. I can see someone might just send him a little message through the chat and go from there. Others might still see your full video. I don't know what that means. That's fine. You can see whatever you want to see, guys. Okay, next one. Is a question from Niels again. what are your thoughts on the damage to this eucalyptus? The eucalyptus cladocalyx, extensive bark delamination in certain areas. We'll talk about that and maybe try and refine our terms for that. Accompanied by frothy exudates. I did not see any kino ooze, 100% full and healthy looking canopy. We're going to correct that word there, canopy, and I do it all the time, but our current language choice is not canopy, it's crown. Crown of a tree, canopy of a group of trees. That's where the Australian standard has it, and will conform and fit in. So general information and tips on transplanting a brachychiton rupestris. We'll do that second. So first one is this tree, and these are, the bark is coming off or delaminating as you described it, because this tissue is dead. And there's got to be a reason for this tissue being dead. It'll either be a root problem or a fungal problem. We've either had a root harmed or we've had a fungus get in, are the two most common causes. And we've got this oozing now. This oozing is interesting because this is a nice little fermentation process that you see going on. So commonly we see it with slime flux, but what's happening here is we're getting the sugars in the tree and they're getting broken down, and we're seeing a nice amount of methane being produced. So a fermentation process is going on. Niels, are you there?
Yeah, got you.
Yep.
So what's actually fermenting?
Yeah, that's we've got fermentation going on here, and you'll often see these with insects swarming around them, because this has actually got alcohol, and alcohol has a good caloric value. It's about 7 kilocalories per gram. So it's pretty neat to see. Butterflies in particular will come around and you'll see them get drunk. Has the same effect on butterflies as people. I think that's quite neat. So yeah, that's a bit of a concern as to what's caused that to happen or why that's happening. One of the things I do note is the wound appears to be spiraling around, and
Yeah, it kind of was there.
Yeah, that may be lightning, but it's odd that there are two streams of it here, so it may not be lightning. So,
and that was my first thought, and then I wasn't sure because it's not going all the way to the ground either.
yeah, but that can be simply accounted for by this little fella here. See it?
Benson, yeah.
And so there's our potential Earth, and you'll see the same thing happening in the upper canopy when you've got trees near power lines. Lightning strikes, travels inside the stem to start off with, pops out, finds the power lines beside, hops over to the power lines and leaves the rest of the tree alone. So it's something to always look for when you see an upper portion of the tree that's dead, and not the other. And I think, no, it wasn't Jason Paxton. I think it was another ex-student. We had a bunya that was hit by lightning, and because the way the water came out along the branches and down, and the foliage was hanging down, the shortest path to ground that was good was along the outer canopy. So it came down, took the top out, then came down one side and hit the ground through the foliage rather than through the wood. The shortest path, the least resistant path is the path that it's going to take.
Yeah, I've seen it jump to a shed before and knock all the power out in the shed.
Yeah, I've seen it take out power lines on a number of occasions. So,
I really don't know what actually happened there.
Yeah, I don't know what has happened. And, the great news is we don't always have to know what's happened. We just have to be aware that we've now got something to manage.
I'll just put it down as monitor because the canopy's full and healthy, or the crown, sorry, is full and healthy, and I wasn't too concerned. I was just wondering what was going on.
And that's a perfectly good response. And monitoring will also allow you time to see what's going on as well. And, I think I've mentioned this before. I'm not too good at predicting the future. Not good at all. So the next time you come back, this tree may be flourishing, this tree may be dead, and I'm happy for everything from that end to the other end. What I do know is that what's happening here, in particular, this alcohol reaction, is good because it stops decay.
Yeah.
Okay, stops decay because alcohol is a really good antibiotic.
Is that just a good side effect of it, sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a good side effect of it. So where you get slime flux going on, you don't usually get any extensive decay going on because the alcohol, at least for a period, I mean, eventually it'll evaporate out, but the alcohol for a period gives a degree of protection.
So we're just calling slime flux as a common name for multiple different.
Yeah, a group of organisms, but there's
processes.
bacterial, mostly bacterial, but sometimes single-celled fungi. So the yeast. So, but bacterial slime flux is what I'd punt it as, but slime flux is fine. And it's pretty neat to see. It's a great thing. So really appreciate it having been shared.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's the other little question. Can we come back to it, but remind me? And that is hints and tips on transplanting a brachychiton, but I will cover the critical bits first. That is green side up, brown side down. Okay.
Lucky you said that. I would have got the wrong way around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I say that with a degree of sarcasm and facetiousness because they move so well. They're just an amazing plant.
Yep.
Be aware that in most circumstances, they will have deep sinker roots.
Yeah.
They've got a carrot on them. And in fact, if you go get a Brachychiton rupestris that's in a tube, you can usually pop that out of. We've grown them on in the glass house or the shade houses. They're only sort of 100, 150 mils high. They're quite edible, the carrot.
Yeah, right.
So they have very distinct, deep carroted roots. So
I had no idea where to start even trying to judge the weight of it because I don't know if I can use a little loader or if I need a crane for it. But I have no idea where to even start trying to count the weight of that thing.
Calculating the weight of it's really easy. Just think about it as a cylinder. Pick the spot that you want to make the cylinder at, and then just calculate it for the volume of water. There's a little bit of weight in the wood, but not a lot. Sorry about this, guys. I'm in war. Right. Sorry, my wife is interstate, and it's a completely different time frame for her.
So you should be panicking when you say you're at war.
No, that's she. If I said ArborMentor, she wouldn't recognize it. Unfortunately, she has Alzheimer's, so her memory is not always the best. Frequently not the best.
Yeah.
So yes, that's the way of doing it. If you want to get a rough idea, pick the thickest bit, and you'll be fine for putting an allometric equation onto it. So just use the root loss calculator. The very first stage of that will give you the total mass. Remembering that the roots are much the same again because they're big. They're bigger in mass. So, and the very first time I ever saw a Brachychiton rupestris transplanted was in Roma in Queensland, and they probably had a root plate that was maybe 150, 200 millimeters out from the base of the trunk.
Yeah, right. How big was it?
Probably half a meter, 700 mils in that range in the middle of the swelling, and about a 5 or 6 meter total height. So reasonable size specimen, but remembering they did have deep roots. And if you want to have a look at some great shots Russell from the Ace of Spades. Russell has some really good images that'll let you see what the root system of Brachychition rupestris is like. So I think I've covered enough on that to give you enough information to look and go forward.
Cool, thank you.
And Russell's a lovely guy, quite approachable, and so he's not going to tell you how to do everything, but again, worthwhile having a chin wag with if you're filling up to it.
Yeah.
Just make sure you got some time when you talk to him, though. He likes to talk.
Oh yeah, but he's a clever young man, and he's always been a delight.
Yeah.
Jeremy, have you got any hints? Because you're a banana bender. You have a lot more Brachychiton rupestris up your end of the world.
Yeah, I agree completely. Deep roots. The first one we did with Jensen's in late 80s. I remember it was the first transplant I ever did, and it had a 3 meter deep root ball. We just kept going down and down and down and get this thing out.
That's a big
I've generally gone one times the basal flare. It's like the bottom of the trunk out as a rough guide.
The widest bit.
Yeah.
Try not to damage those sinker roots, the ones in close to the trunk. You'll see some smaller ones further out. Don't worry about those.
The central ones.
Yeah, what we call the cordex or the carrot. You want to try and retain that without damaging or breaking it.
How would the soil and the soil where it is, how much would that affect the shape of the sinker roots?
It does have some influence on it, but genetically it's so predisposed to it that it can't help itself.
Yep. All right.
So,
I've been deeper than I expected then.
Yeah, I've always found the hardest thing is actually the physical, trying to sling it to pick it up or get underneath it to pick it up. I mean, ideally, get underneath it's your better option. But they're not the easiest thing in the world to pick up.
Yeah.
And they do bruise.
I feel like they'd be way heavier than for their size. They'd be very heavy, I would think.
Yes. Yeah, they're stocky. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a quick one. So do you guys provide some sort of guarantee that it'll survive if they follow a certain protocol or some sort of warranty or something with your transplant jobs?
So let me just ask you, when you went to your doctor the last time and you had a cold, did he give you a guarantee that you were going to keep on living for the rest of your eternity?
No.
Quite the opposite, probably.
Yeah.
They're living things, but what I will guarantee is that if I've been negligent in some way, I will wear that. So if I grip around it with a set of chains and pull tight with the chain and choker and I squeeze the thing and crush it to death, boy, you want to come and sue me for sure.
Yeah.
That would be gross negligence. But, Russell does make a comment, though, that I think is worthwhile keeping in mind. And he says, he doesn't sell one of them now without a calibratable soil moisture meter. And, I don't understand why watering is so difficult, but I've got 50 years of experience. And I get why so many people don't. I bought a young pot plant for the office about maybe 8 weeks ago, and they had it dead within 3 weeks. And I'm sitting there thinking, how you could have just wrung the water out and you still wanted to water it. So
love it to death.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
I think his comment about having people use a moisture meter, nowadays a calibratable moisture meter will set you back somewhere between $200 and $500.
So what would the benefit be with the calibrated one?
You can get more accurate moisture readings based on the soil type that you're dealing with.
Yep.
Okay, because soil and water is a polar chemical. It's got this sort of at a molecular level, a magnetic property. It likes to attach and cling. In fact, it's so good at attaching and clinging, it takes things, chemicals, and it pulls them apart into anions, and that's why it's good solvent. Okay.
Yeah.
And that clinginess behaves at a bigger level too. For example, water can run up through bricks, capillary reaction, climbing up little small holes. So the way that water behaves in soil is important. And again, intuitively, that's difficult for us to deal with. And intuitively, we often make the mistake of how we're going to handle that. So I think it's we're getting better at it as a profession. We talk about it more, but I've only ever had one person walk out of an anatomy workshop and call me a heretic, and that was over the fact that I tried convincing them that buried French drains don't work or buried ag line doesn't work, and he just couldn't accept that water would cling to the clay. He thought it would run out into the ag line, and it doesn't. It clings to the clay. And there's some really good videos that show that. If you're not sure about it, perhaps you can flick an email to Peter, and we can share you a link so you can have a look. It's really important that arborists understand that water issue, because it's what creates interfaces on development sites. And a soil interface problem is heaps worse than filling alone. You can fill a meter up around a tree, and the tree won't have any real big negative effects in many cases, provided you don't create a reverse soil interface. So you make the upper layer become water holding and the bottom layer not get water. That's just nasty.
Yeah.
Okay.
All good. Thanks for that.
GPS and GIS is not too broad, Vicky, but it's one that will take a little bit more. And I question it, and it'll be interesting. Jeremy, do you do GIS or CAD stuff?
Yeah, we do it. We do it every day of the week.
And how do you find you're doing it for trees on your development sites and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so trees on development sites.
And tree risk assessments.
Everything gets plotted for a tree risk assessment, just for reference and ease of presenting. So the big difference is you've got to know why you're doing it to pick what system you're going to use. So when we're doing development side stuff, we'll use 1 centimeter accuracy GPS. And when we're doing street tree plots to pick up just tree information, it's dotted on a screen. It doesn't really matter where, as long as it's close to where it is, that's all I need to know. The other thing to remember is one program will not do everything. You need multiple programs to make it all stitched together.
So 1 centimeter accuracy requires an aerial or a data correction afterwards, one of the two.
We use an RTK system, so it's live correction while we're doing it. It worked off the triangulation between the phone towers, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work particularly well when you get outside phone range.
Yeah, understandably.
So
good in metropolitan areas, and peri-urban areas, rural areas starts to fall apart.
Yeah, but even in the city, once you get in the city, it starts to fall apart again too, because everything bounces off the buses drive by which have Wi-Fi in them, and that bounces it, and then the buildings bounce it, and sometimes you've got to be a bit patient with it.
Okay, great. And in terms of you're putting it on, obviously the person picking up that information to be given coordinates is usually going to only have it as accurate as their mobile device, which is plus or minus 10 meters. So they're again, it's not about being able to find things so much as being able to record things.
Yes, very much so. And with the development site stuff, because certainly up here, I don't know about other states, but most surveyors don't work in real world coordinates. So we will get survey drawings that aren't georeferenced. So we pick up the information spatially, but we also pick up known points spatially. And then we take those known points and we pick up the drawing and put it on top of the survey drawing to get our calculations.
Yep.
And the big luxury of it is whether I process one tree or I process 10,000 trees, it takes me the same amount of time in the office.
Yeah, once you collect the data, it's lightning speed.
Yeah.
And have you tried Lidar at all yet, Jeremy? Have you
Only
to that temptation?
Yeah, no, only engage. I've used it. I've engaged people to do it to 3D map the crown of trees, but I haven't done it myself. No, I have looked at it a couple of times and gone, oh, that looks really interesting. There's some really new nifty handheld devices, and I go, you spent enough money. No, you've got what works.
Yeah, look, that's the one that appeals to me more. It's just because of the accuracy of terrestrial LiDAR and the amount of information you can pick up.
Yeah.
Very data hungry, incredibly data hungry. But, you know, we now have software good enough that you can find, for example, show me and color on the crown every branch greater than 25 millimeters in diameter is dead. You know, fancy being able to pick up that sort of information.
And you can do it at 60 kilometers an hour driving down the road if you want to do it.
Well, probably not quite that fast, but yes, you certainly can get it. And at walking speed with a good terrestrial LiDAR, you can pick up just so much information. And, you know, CAD, GIS, GPS, LiDAR, a lot of these specialty areas, my view is that there are probably times when it's smarter just to piggyback with somebody, to phone up somebody like Jeremy and say, hey, I need some precision on this one. Can you collect the data for me, rather than necessarily going out and owning every toy and necessarily going through the learning curves. And in my earlier days, there used to be an arborist, still is an arborist around in Canberra, Bruno Wright, lovely guy. Bruno was an AutoCAD trainer. Last time I talked to Bruno about AutoCAD, he said, oh, hell no, I'd never touch it again, because every year it goes through a minor change, and about every 5 years it goes through a major change. And he said, it just takes so much time to keep up with it. You know, you're going to spend a week in every year essentially keeping on top of that knowledge and that skill area. So if you're only using it for 1 week or 2 weeks in the year, that's an intensive expenditure for very little return. If you're doing it like Jeremy's doing it, probably 1 day, 2 days a week at least, you know, that's 100 days in a year. That starts to become a reasonable return on time, learning and investment. And that's the bit you've got to weigh up.
But even I have a CAD tech full time doing CAD work. So, and well, I used to do all my own CAD work, and I could do it to a basic level. But even I've gone to do stuff in probably not for the last 4 or 5 years, but I've gone to do stuff and I've gone, I can't. I know I can do it. I know there's a button here somewhere, but you think I could find them?
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Unless you're doing it all the time, and GIS is even more complicated.
It's the speed at which you do it as well. It's not that you can't do it, but you know, I've often said to my clients when we've been asked for some precise calculations, look, you guys use CAD all the time. You calculate it, give me the answer. And I've been amazed at how quickly, like 15 minutes later, the email's back and they've done all the calculations, and I'm thinking, I couldn't have even got the data in that time.
Yeah, very much so.
You know, and I mean, we've talked about this before on ArborMentor, is this process of even entering data. I'm not a fast typist. I have a typist that works for me that's fast, but I'm slow. So I want Dee to get as much information in before I start the reports, because my time will take longer. And the more she understands, the more competent she becomes in arboriculture, the faster my report writing is becoming. It's not that I'm becoming quicker, it's that getting the right person to do the job is becoming quicker. And I was going to share that we introduced had plans into the training package for the diploma, in part because Peter Caster was very keen on it being there. And I asked Peter how he did it, and his response again was the same. We farm out all our CAD work. And my view of it is if you're going to farm it out, probably isn't much point studying it. So it was never brought in as a compulsory unit, even though lots of places like it, and lots of places like to deliver it, because there are qualifications like landscape design and engineering things where CAD is just so normal that finding someone to teach it's fairly easy, whereas some of the more obscure ARB type subjects are more challenging.
I will say though, it would be like many things, having a basic understanding of the terminology of what to ask for, particularly when things don't work. Like when you get a set of drawings and you send it off and the model is missing a set of drawing files because it needs to be packaged. So it looks, to all intents and purposes, when you receive it and you send it to your CAD tech, that it's all there, but then they come back and they say it's not there. Having a basic knowledge of how it works helps it move along faster.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I think a familiarity is different than an expertise. So I'm familiar with how LiDAR works, but boy, I spoke to one of Australia's leading terrestrial LiDAR people, and he said, oh yeah, we run a training program. Depending on how far you want to go, somewhere between a week and a month, we can get you up to speed. There's a difference between understanding how the basic system works and becoming proficient at it.
Yeah.
And then there's a big difference between proficient and becoming excellent. And those that are excellent just make the whole process look so simple. I use Word every day. Many years ago, I employed a Word expert, and I would say she would make the screen dance. It was just amazing. Oh, you want that moved across 0.5 mil? Yeah, I can do that exactly 0.5 mil. I still can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than we want people to engage us as professionals. So, we don't have to be professionals in every other aspect. We need to have an understanding, but we don't need to know everything.
Yeah. Vicky, does that cover you basically on the area? Would you like to?
What I need to know as well is, I don't know whether I'll do the GPS and the GIS myself, but invariably I find that the surveys are not accurate.
Never.
And I'm doing a big site now, big double block up at Seaforth, and they've got all the coordinates and things. But when I went back to the architects and asked them, what information did you request from the surveyors? This is part of my issue about how can I communicate with my clients in terms of the instructions they should be giving to the survey company so that I get something that's accurate, or they've even looked at the requirements of that council to know what trees outside of the boundary should be included, for example. I don't know, like every time I go to a development site, the first thing I do, we had a major, like a big tree that had to be pruned, and I said, right, let's just check the measurement from the boundary in relation to this new development. Well, it was 1.5 meters out, and it was closer to the building. So that had huge implications for the pruning.
Yes, look, it's a real problem in terms of getting the right material collected. And we've got to understand, first of all, a surveyor is not an arborist. So again, it's an odd process for them. They go out and they look at it and they don't see the differences between the trees. So they'll miss trees. It's not they're trying to leave them out. All trees look the same.
But this place at Seaforth, it's only trees. It's like it hasn't been built on yet.
Yeah.
So they're only instructed to record information about trees.
So, yeah, and that's one of those situations where you've got heavy canopy, that tagging does have a place and a benefit. Particularly if we've got a lot of trees. And then dealing with neighbours, one of the things that I do on a fairly regular basis is simply make estimates. It doesn't take a lot. You've got a whole pile of stuff like Wi-Fi measurers now and laser measurers that can give you a reasonably accurate measurement if you need to. So, you can stand at the fence, point at the trunk of the tree on the other side, and it'll tell you how many meters away that is.
Yeah, I've got all those. Yeah.
And then, the width again is an approximation, but you'll be close enough. And that's because even with laser measuring devices, there's a fundamental error when you measure the trunk because it's circular, it's not square. And the crown's not easy to measure either for the same thing. There's curvature to it. So these are all approximations, but they're, plus or minus 100 mils or so on trunk diameter. It's not going to be a problem unless it's a meter away from the boundary and you're building to the boundary. By the time you're 4 or 5 times trunk diameter away, it's less of a problem. And I can hopefully share that under the new revision of the standard, on one side at 6 times trunk diameter should not be an issue in most circumstances. That's where one of our new thresholds sits at about that spot. The current threshold is 10%, and that's 8.4 times trunk diameter, and that'll stay. That's not going.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And look, it's arboriculture and construction is a series of compromises. If we get too rigid in what we expect and too rigid in what we want, I think we become a part of the problem rather than a part of the solution. I think we start to alienate those that we want to actually engage with and get cooperation from. So we've got to be careful to balance those two things. At least I think that's the case, and that's my opinion.
I agree completely. And if you can, the reason we've been pretty strong going down the CAD path is it's universal across the other professions. So I can get it into a drawing format in the right XREFs, they can XREF it into their drawing. And then when you can say, here's the drawing file, put it on, stay outside the TVZ, and we're good. Or this is the particular tree I want you to stay away from. They get it on their drawings and it's on all their drawings. So it can talk across the professions a lot easier.
Yeah. And again, Vicky, I'm really slack. I'll go back to the architect or the designer and say, you're the expert, put it on. And so we give them a table and we say, this is the stuff we want you to plot. And said almost always they'll have it done before I get my report anywhere near underway, and they're saying to me, when are you going to get yours finished? Now this question that went with that is tree roots and the things that reflect tree roots. Air reflects tree roots. I'm pretty sure of that one. You don't get too many roots growing upwards, although you get some. But retaining walls will deflect to a point, and then it really depends on the tree species. So, for example, if you put a root barrier in for figs, they'll go down. Once they've gone down, they'll follow that wall down, right in behind the wall. Once they go to the bottom, they'll come back up, and they'll continue going in the same direction as they're going beforehand. That's one of the phenomena we've got described. There's actually a technical term to describe that process and roots. So it depends on the tree species. I've seen London plane tree roots growing up behind the inside of a retaining wall, going up a metre and a half, up to a Phoenix canariensis. The Phoenix canariensis had moisture with the base of the pedioles decaying away. Up the Phoenix canariensis in a series of zigzags. As it grew upwards, because conditions were right.
And would Melaleuca quinquenervia be fairly tough and do something similar?
Melaleuca quinquenervia is very tough. It doesn't grow upwards that often, I've seen, but I handle the other way with Melaleuca quinquenervia. You can cut all the way to the trunk essentially on, a third of it, and it really, it'll stress a little bit. If you get water, it'll fix it back up overnight. And north of where Jeremy is a place called Port Douglas, and they've got Jeremy, correct me, it's not a Quinquenervia, it's Leucoxylon, is it? Melaleuca leucoxylon?
Leucodendra.
Leucodendra, thank you, Andy.
That's one.
Melaleuca leucodendra in Port Douglas, and they've got buildings actually with the trees growing and the floor constructed around them and the roof constructed around them. In fact, if you ask me, I'll go up there in the next couple of weeks and I'll photograph them for you. Ask me, guys. Go on.
I might send you a specific example for the next time, because I've got Melaleuca quinquenervias, street trees, growing between footpath road and driveways. So
they're growing underneath the driveway. They are growing underneath the road. I don't know where we got the concept that trees won't grow underneath roads. Now, the exception is sandy soils with no organic material in them and nothing that gives lateral movement. They'll form a cone. But if you're talking about any amount of silt and clay that allows for lateral movement of water, they'll move across underneath the road. Concrete's porous. I hate to say it. Even waterproof concrete that is in my water tank is porous. Bitumen is porous. Bitumen's a little less porous than concrete, but standard concrete, and I can show you photographs of it. We did a lot of concreting here, and where poolcrete was used, which is a low porosity, almost waterproof concrete, where poolcrete was used, the water sits on top on a nice sort of 2 mil drizzle over an hour. The water will fall through and soak through the remaining concrete. It's soaking through, it's going in. So concrete's quite porous, bitumen's a little less porous. And then the stronger your concrete, so 32 MPa concrete is less porous than 25, 42 is less porous than 32, 60 MPa is really resistant to water. So it does depend on the individual mix of the concrete as well.
yeah, okay, thank you.
So expect roots, and then understand that there's a thing called first order root division, and the number of first order roots really has an impact on a tree's figure. If you count the number of first order roots in that Melaleuca, you'll probably find there's 20 or 30. A vigorous tree is said, based on the work by Mark Siddell, to have 7 or more first order lateral roots. Ficus and Melaleucas, you can start saying, well, these are trees that are built to be incredibly resilient to the loss of roots, because they've got so many first order laterals. It's just ridiculous. Does that help make?
Yeah, it does. That's very good. Thank you.
Some judgments in terms of where to go with that.
Yeah, thank you.
The other way to think about that too, we need to just brush on, is you need to think about where retaining walls and structures are going in comparison with the existing trees. And every now and again, you need to advise the client to appropriately engineer the retaining wall or the basement to deal with pressures exerted by tree roots. And I have seen at least one basement wall pushed in by a camphor laurel. I know it's possible, and that was on an apartment block. So my head says that's not a good situation. So there are times where we need to say to people, hey, be aware that roots also create problems the other way, and you need to plan for that. You can do it. It's not impossible. Okay, so this is a question. Was Andy, was this you that raised this question?
Correct. Yeah, that's something for me.
I'm still scratching my head. I agree. So this is a tree that fell over in some inclement weather, ficus. You can see the base of the ficus here and here. At what point is a party negligent that? And negligence is about somebody. There's 3 types. So there's a misfeasance, a non-feasance, and a malfeasance, whatever they are. Misfeasance doing the wrong thing. Malfeasance doing it with intent. So misfeasance is just not taking care of something you should have. And non-feasance, you've done nothing and you should have done. So the question here is, what would have a reasonable person, or what should have a reasonable person done in this situation if you didn't know the tree was moving in the ground? If you didn't know it was going to fail, how do you prevent it? It's just not possible before the event. So when something like this fails, it's just tough luck. It's the classic case that addresses this, and it's, I'm sorry, Andy, it's horrible reading, but it's a brilliant piece of education, is Robson v. Leschke. In Robson v. Leschke, the Chief Justice, Brian Preston's in the Land Environment Court, talks about a tree that fell over and caused damage to a neighbouring property. And it's a very long judgment. The last, I think, 2 or 3 paragraphs simply point out that the damage lands where it falls, that the householder hadn't done anything that they shouldn't have done. They didn't fail to do something that they should have done, and they certainly didn't do it with negligence. It was wind that caused it to fail over. So it's just tough luck. And I am mortified with how readily different councils hand out ratepayers' money around the country. And then I have my hero, and I'm happy he's retired now, but Joe Lilly, he's not quite retired, but he's never going to go back to work. He's got enough accumulated leave. Joe would just simply say, well, it's just tough luck. I'm not going to pay anything except the cost of glasses or dentures. That's it. You know, you would have to say, what did I do wrong? Or in this case, what was happening now? Even, it goes as far as this, and there's a great one out of Sydney, the Bogan Davies. Now, I'll let you figure out all the rest of the implications with a hyphenated name like that, Bogan Davies. But the Bogan Davies complained to the council regularly that the Norfolk Island pine in their yard was dangerous and it needed to be removed. Well, yeah, okay. The council looks at it, says nothing's a problem. A big storm comes through, the tree blows over, and they say, look, we told the council. Well, you told the council it was dangerous, but that's easy to say, the tree's dangerous. What's difficult to do is say what is dangerous, how dangerous it is, and what really should be done about it. So it's dangerous is really a meaningless thing. It's, I've noticed the tree rocking in the ground, you'd need to take an action. If you hadn't noticed the tree rocking, if they hadn't noticed the tree rocking in the ground and they live there, how would you notice it? So realistically, the Bogan Davies said, look, the tree's dangerous, didn't articulate that, look, we think its root plate might be shallow, it might be sitting on a rock shelf or whatever, and there's nothing like that. It fell over. And what I found fascinating is the Bogan Davies were going to the council for the damages because they had let their insurance lapse. Now, I don't know about you, but if I truly believed that a tree was going to fall down in my house, you all know that I live in a $4.5 million mansion, you know, maybe 5 million. I don't know, you know, I would have it insured to the hilt. The reality is they didn't know. They just wanted to whinge and bitch and complain about it. And then when the time came, say, hey, I told you so. Well, I've got a system for that for the Melbourne Cup. And if we take just the people online here today, I'm going to tell you all which horse is going to win. I want you to all put $1,000 on it. I want you to all give me half, and I'm going to do it systematically. Peter, yours is horse 1, Andy, yours is horse 2, Vicky, yours is horse 3, Nils, yours is horse 4, and so on all the way through. One of you will win. I'll say, see, I told you I could tell you which horse was going to win. And, you know, poor Jeremy ends up having his horse win, and he's going to give me half of it because he's a sucker. That's essentially what ratepayers are doing when they say, oh, I told you it was dangerous and it fails, is yeah, sure. Every now and again, someone's going to get it right, you know. Even you know, a fool throwing a coin is going to get it right occasionally. There's nothing else you can do. So I'm very reluctant to see payment against or by any party. And I was privy to an action fairly recently where a person was paid out, and I just shook my head. It was over $1 million settlement, and I just wonder why they didn't run it in court and go for fraudulent claims. And their view was that it just wasn't worth the effort. They were better paying the claim out. If I was the counsel, I'd have been folding my arms and saying, let's go to court.
Thanks, Mark. Probably one of the big issues is that Byron Shire, like most shires, is pretty large, and it's almost impossible to monitor every tree, not only in our parks and street fronts, but our reserves. In this case here, this reserve is maintained beautifully by busher generators, but which is, you can see there's no weeds there, but the adjoining property had raised concerns about a tree up the back of the reserve, which we had looked at, but not this particular one, and they are sort of blaming us for this incident that happened. And it wasn't even windy. They said that just the whole thing just collapsed, and that's just the nature, I suppose. But yeah, they're sort of saying you should have been able to predict this, just looking at it.
Look, I'm going to do that when I predict which shares are going to go up the most. I just want the 10 shares to go up the most. I mean, everyone does that. That's as predictable. There's this sort of expectation in part because arborists do that. Arborists are very much inclined to say, well, that tree's going to fall over. I would have read at least 3 reports like that this year that condemned a tree because it was going to fall. In fact, I might have mentioned one. I had a camphor laurel with a dead branch about 10 centimeters in diameter. They reduced it down in length to about 2.5 meters in length, and it was going to fall off, most probably using the BTRA or the track frame method that you use if you use track, going to fall off in the next year, 50% chance of that. So 2 years, probably shouldn't expect there. 4 years, we wouldn't expect it there at all. I grabbed the branch 35 centimeters from the end, and I hoisted my body and my harness, my tools, so about 140 kilos hanging that far out. How likely is to break that? So small, but arborists are out there saying, well, look, it's probable. I see very few things that I look at and think is probable, as in meaning more likely than not. If I could shake the branch and I could feel it moving at the union and I could see it getting ready to pop out of a socket, I'd say, yep, I get your point. So, yeah, look, the only thing that would have made me think that it was going to fail if I had seen the soil heaving. And I
wasn't there at the time, and what this tree actually did was then it fell over, but that didn't cause damage, but it dominoed on a number of others that did eventually just strike this.
Of course, that was entirely foreseeable. We knew which direction it was going to fall in, and we knew how that was going to affect the next tree. And you can start to see how it becomes fanciful. But what they're really saying is probably we didn't have insurance. We were real dumb, and now we want someone else to help us out because we're stupid. All due respect to the householder if that wasn't the case, but that's what you've got a household insurance for. And
also looking at the area around the tree and doing target assessment by itself, there's no target. If there's no target, there can't possibly be a calculated risk.
Yeah, I agree with Jeremy. It's one that I'd be just smiling at them and saying, okay, fine, if you want to go to court, go for it, but you've got insurance. And if they say no, we don't have insurance, I'd say, well, boy, isn't it a good thing that you got hit by a falling tree and not by a microburst or a bloody hailstorm or something that destroyed the place completely? We've saved you that embarrassing mistake. Now stay insured. I mean, it's very harsh, I understand, but that's the way I feel about those sort of things.
Yeah, well, we did get it off their house, and we tidied it all up, but we're not going to pay for
Too
the
generous.
air conditioning unit that was damaged.
Too generous in my mind.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is one that came in indirectly to me, Peter, and it. I said that if you're going to send me stuff, then I'm going to have to things. But the one to identify the tree. So this is a tree. It's in Campbelltown, and they're told it was about 140 years old. I don't think that it is, but it's certainly a good age tree. And a leaf like that probably gives it away, except that a leaf like that is a little bit odd. So it may be a little bit more difficult for people to get than it would normally be. I'll just give you a couple more. Does anyone want to guess at a genus to start off with? Or family?
Is it Brachychiton?
Brachychiton.
It's a brachychiton, yeah. And I suspect that this is an early hybrid. You know, maybe something like belladonna or something like that. It may not be. The brachychitons, we're still discovering them. Kath Rosso will tell you about one. I think, Andy, you know about it up your end of the world, just off the Gold Coast hinterland there. Still in the process of being taxonomically described. But yes, that is a brachychiton. And that process of saying, I don't know, and pulling your hair out because there's no flower, there's no fruit, is something that we've all gone through and I go through. I'm probably good at around about 3,000 species or so, not much more. And I do struggle with identifying things. Now, if you work in a very confined area and you work mostly with natives, it really becomes a smaller group. You know, I noticed, for example, when I was working in the Northern Rivers, there's a lot less diversity than you get in Sydney, where at least 300 ethnic groups have brought in, sometimes smuggled in, material that's sometimes not even recorded as being here. So it does get difficult. But if you think about that leaf looks like that little group of Malvaceae that includes brachychiton, includes candlenut, you know, so you start to see some patterns, and that will often help you start to narrow down something. But there's nothing like getting to the end of your wits and saying, I need assistance in identifying something. And we've all done that. And then I've submitted a report more than once that says deciduous species based on the bud and the bud alone and the bark and the pith. I can't identify it. There's not a great key to deciduous trees of the world. And so, yeah, I've had to shamefully, on numerous occasions, put in as not even a genus, deciduous species. So does that make people feel any more comfortable? Yeah?
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, look, and getting it wrong, I get it wrong with eucalypts periodically because I'm often not going through a full taxonomical process. I'm looking at the broad macro features, and, you know, sometimes there's an incredible amount of crossover. For example, out my end of the world, Eucalyptus creba and Eucalyptus bayeri are predominantly distinguished taxonomically based on whether there are sterile or non-sterile anthers. That starts to become crazy. Now, in most cases, you can pick creba because it looks different, but only subtly. And, you know, I've certainly had that case, for example, with forest red gum teraticornis and the cabbage gum amplifolia. I can get them most of the time, but you get those ones that start to look like each other. You get, you know, a broader leaf terracornis without that same sort of quite sweeping form, and you get a narrower leafed amplifolia, and you think, oh, damn it. That could be either.
And at different times of year, certainly up here, we get our propinquas and our Angophora leocarpus at different times of year at a viewing like a broad level. They look the same. I mean,
and I've seen that with some of the non-pink form of trunks of Citriodora and maculata, and then variegata as well with its narrow form. You know, by the time you get to Henryi, there's enough of difference between Corymbia henryi and Corymbia maculata that's a little easier to pick. But there are times when you just sit there and say it's a eucalyptus species, and there it's useful to describe something else as stringy bark, iron bark, red gum or something like that. Ryan's given us a great little hint of a book. A lot of the problem with these books, Ryan, is that they're somewhat localized. I don't know how many species of deciduous trees there are in the world, but it's thousands. And Asiatic species are still being described. Yes, you can narrow it.
Completely agree. It's a good start for. I found it's a really good start for at least family, and then potentially genus from there.
Yeah. Look, and that's the sort of thing you're looking for. Is, as I said, some form of familiarity. Is the pith chambered? What's the shape of the bud? You can tell things like phyllotaxy or the arrangement of the leaves still from the bud. But you may not get that sort of, what sort of leaf we've got, whether it's going to be compound or simple. A lot of that stuff is not present with ease, just from buds itself.
No, definitely not. But it's, as I said, I found it really good as a starting point. It's got a really good guide on the features of looking at with twigs. And like any key, it's just that the more you use it, the more you start to identify and understand what the author's talking about. Yeah,
look, Phillips has a good one as well with great images in it. It's just a question that it's predominantly British and Western European, so again, it's fairly limited in its application. And that tends to be the problem with keys. It tends to represent the local material when it comes to these sort of keys, and then material that's commonplace that's been introduced. When it starts to get to the non-commonplace, you can just pull your hair out and wish you weren't being an arborist.
Yeah, that's true. Or you go down that rabbit hole and spend hours trying to find it, and then there's that you get something close and you're like, ooh, yes.
There's always a trade-off there. Today I had to do a course of a branch failure, and the client dropped the branch off. I looked at it and said, yes, it's had a prior failure. It's developed a crack. The crack's gone about 50% of the way through the branch. The trees tried to deal with it, didn't deal with it in time. Looks like it's gone a second time, and then finally failed. And I thought, yeah, I'm still going to have to do a long section to make the client happy and verify that what I'm seeing on the outside, I'm seeing on the inside. And everything in me saying, don't do a long section. It's just such a big waste. And I think oftentimes we've got to weigh that up. As if I've got it down to eucalyptus or metaceae, well, that's probably half the battle. Spending an extra 2 hours trying to key it out and pulling your hair out is not worth the effort. And if the client hadn't expected an axial long section, I wouldn't have done one. It just was, in my mind, unnecessary at that point. But the client was expecting it, so I've done one, and the report will cover, 15 odd images and be more of a waste of time than it needed to be for a tree that, in my mind, is just an ordinary lemon center gum dropping branches. And, of course, everyone knows it's going to kill somebody one day, and I guess eventually one lemon-scented gum somewhere will. But I don't have a record of one yet. Does anyone have a record of lemon-scented gum killing somebody? Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? It's such a nice tree. It'd be good if they did. And make them more valuable. Okay, any questions from the floor? We've got a few minutes if you need to.
I have a question.
I didn't do it.
I'm looking for a research paper that puts together the combined ecological, environmental services of trees. So I know they're exponentially more as they get larger. I know that, but and I can find papers that talk about each individual component, be it carbon, water, etc. But is there a paper that's out there that combines it all to demonstrate the exponential benefits of larger trees?
Not that I know of, Jeremy. The best I would say to you would iTree considers them a lot more collectively.
Yeah.
And it considers a lot of eco-service type benefits, but it doesn't consider health benefits. And there's lots of emerging work in that area at the moment, particularly out of Australia. Most amazing. I love the fact that we're doing some things right. We've got experts doing some amazing work on the health benefits, life-saving health benefits of trees. And then we cut them down. But I did take the paper by Condo Hotel, and that looks at the life-saving health benefits of trees in Philadelphia, and converted that using the Australian value of statistical life and the Australian dollar conversion, and it worked out to about $10 a square metre for, say, $11.20, but $10 around. And Brisbane wasn't too much the difference. That's just the life-saving health benefits. Then you start looking at eco-service benefits, and you're probably looking at about the same again, I imagine, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, and obviously as they get bigger, that exponentially gets bigger. It doesn't get bigger just in a linear line. So,
no,
I'm arguing with council. I've got a developer that wants to plant big trees, and council's going, no, you can't do it. It's inappropriate.
Yes,
even though the species is on their recommended planting list.
A number of years ago, Jeremy, I was in a land environment court case. I'm pretty sure the commissioner was a architect, if I recall, and I'd come up for a design to build a suspended house with metal roof, doubling or halving of the spacing between the trusses, so the metal roof was hit, wouldn't be significantly damaged and easily repairable. And the commissioner said, well, I'll never allow a house to be built under a Sydney blue gum. And I said, but the risk is low. I mean, the number of people killed inside a house by a falling tree is just so insignificant. And he said, most amazingly, I don't care what the facts say, I'll not allow it. And this particular development site was on Pennant Hills Road, which is a fairly major road, with lots of big blue gums overhanging the road. And I pointed that out, and he just said, I don't care. And so you deal with people's emotions. And there's a great paper out of Tasmania that looks at the impact of our attitudes on trees and risk and the size of the trees that we are planting. And it points out that as a result of our risk aversion, that's really a last 30 years event, 35-year event, we're putting in smaller and smaller and smaller trees. We think that Tristaniopsis lorena is what we need to replace a Crimbia maculata with, not realizing that that is going to be a forever loss. And there's been some really good stuff that's come out very recently looking from a climate change perspective, and most of you know that I'm somewhat skeptical. But it looked at land use changes and the impact of farming, in particular, on global warming. And land use turns out to be a very important indicator of carbon contribution and of temperature changes for a number of reasons. And I look at that and I think, yeah, we're just creating these cities that are hotspots. And yes, bang smack in the middle of our city where we've got these massive big concrete towers, we're doing our best to try and cool it with trees that are smaller than the towers. I mean, it's a lost deal. And then when you get to single-story dwellings, we've done the same thing. We want trees that are less in size than the buildings. And I think, I did a paper on it down here, Jeremy, a while back, and if you ask me, I'll flick the PDF, not the PDF, the PowerPoint to you. Not a lot of it won't make sense, but some of it will. We looked at replacing canopy and replacing biomass. Biomass replacement was just horrendous. It was something like 120 odd trees to replace a 25-year-old eucalyptus grandis.
Yeah, I seem to recall seeing that. You just deliver that somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but yeah.
Yeah, and so when you see those numbers, you just start thinking, boy, we're not getting it right still. And I'm fine for someone selecting a smaller tree. I just want to know where they're putting the bigger ones.
Yeah.
And of course, we've all heard that's okay, but someone's already pulled up the paper for you. There we are. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.
Oh no, it's a different one again.
Oh yeah.
Neat.
So I'll have a read of that. Yeah. Yeah, it's just odd that you've got a developer who wants to plant stuff. You know, we've got 300 trees on site. We're removing 20 to do the development, and council's pushing back on it. And then
trees often aren't the issue, Jeremy. You know better than
no,
that.
it's just tuck it into everything else. Yeah.
It's one of the things that we hope we've at least improved a bit with the standard, and that is oftentimes the standard is weaponized, and we think that's inappropriate. The standard's not about making a weapon. The standard's about following a process. But yes, look, and of course, when it comes to what trees to plant, I'm guessing it was probably a landscape architect that said that's inappropriate. Thanks, Andy. Oh, you got a question? Or comment?
My comment is that we in Byron Bay often have landscape architects that are from Melbourne, and some of their choices of landscape material for new developments tends to align with what's in the Women's Weekly this week, and is totally unsympathetic of local flora and the space that we have to occupy, particularly with figs. Like we find figs crammed into tiny spaces. They might be as innocuous as the fiddle leaf fig, the Ficus lyrata, but it can become a bloody big tree, and it looks good in a pot, as does the Norfolk pine that you get for your Christmas tree that you need to find a home for after Christmas. Inappropriate planting for a council is one of the major problems. Schizolabians, Norfolk pines, I could go on and on, but yeah, I am very hesitant and pleased that I'm able to comment on the species selection that proposed by our landscape architects.
Look, I concur with that view. I admire the role that landscape architects play in terms of making the outside spaces more usable and more enjoyable and more appealing. But the fact that they work with landscape does not mean that they know about plants or that they know about trees in particular. The total number of hours spent in their course on trees is 0. On plants is now, there's no mandatory in Australia, there's no mandatory horticultural unit within landscape architects course. They know more about hard surfaces, they know more about design concepts, color, texture, space, repetition, all those wonderful things, and they do a wonderful job. But they really should be deferring to arborists to make those decisions about what to plant, and not the nurseries, which is often where they're defaulting to by saying, what have you got? So I blame the nurseries, not Women's Weekly, but I think we both hold the same view of it, Andy, and that is some of the stuff that we see specified, we just want to pull our hair out. And then once something becomes popular, the mistake gets repeated. So we've gone with mass plantings in Sydney with Tristaniopsis florina luscius. It's vulnerable to a native Buprestidae, a native jewel beetle. It's just a bad choice, particularly when you start doing monocultures along streets. That's a landscape architect's design. It looks good. Let's make something that's uniform. There's something nice about, in my mind, the chaos of something like a rainforest. Any other questions? Excellent, guys. Thanks for being here tonight. Keep the questions coming in and we'll keep on doing what we can to answer them.